In today's video, we're going to take a look at these two bikes right here. We have over here on this side the Specialized Allez. This is an aluminum frame bicycle with a carbon fiber fork. This bike retails for $1,200, and this is the entry-level price point of what you pay for a aluminum frame bike. If you want to get into the sport of road biking, $1,200 gets you an aluminum frame. Over on this side over here, we have the Specialized Tarmac SL6. This is the carbon fiber entry-level bike that Specialized offers. The bike is full carbon fiber. It's $2,800, and it comes with a pretty nice race geometry. I get this question asked so much: what should I do if I'm just starting the sport out? Should I go ahead and start off with the cheaper model, the Specialized Allez or aluminum frame bike? Or should I splurge a little bit more money, go with a carbon fiber bike, and just bite the bullet at the beginning? So in today's video, we're going to talk about the differences of the two frames, the materials, the alloy and carbon fiber. We're going to talk about the benefit to each of them in terms of performance and also price pointing. And also at the end of the video, I'll give you my point of view on it as well. So hopefully you guys go ahead and enjoy the video. So before we get into anything, let me go ahead and just talk about the rundown of these two bikes. This is a $1,200 Specialized Allez frame. This is an aluminum frame, carbon fiber fork. This is an entry-level Shimano group set on here. We have on over here a Shimano Claris, 8 gears in the rear, 2 on the front. This is a pretty normal group set you'll see on any manufacturer out there with an entry-level bicycle like this. And then also you'll see on these aluminum bikes, they usually come with more of an endurance setup. So on this crank right here, it's just a base model Shimano crank. It's a compact crank. It's a 5034 crank with an 8-speed cassette in the rear, and usually it's a much more of a relaxed gearing in the back. The reason for this is because usually the people buying this bike is going to be entry level, maybe don't have the best fitness level, so they want to make sure that whoever buys this bike is capable of doing climbs that they're not used to, being in groups that they're not used to, maybe they don't have the legs underneath them yet, so this bike will be efficient enough for them. Also on here, they have disc brakes. Usually on any manufacturer, they're going to start kind of going over to disc brakes, but it is a mechanical cable disc brake on here. So it's still a disc brake, yes, which I think is a more efficient way of stopping. It's going to stop at the center of the hub, so it's not big as a revolution, so you'll get better stopping power. But I wish it was hydraulic, but yes, it's a cable disc brake on there, which is okay. They also put on here 700 by 30C tires, a very fat tire, again, to add that comfort to an entry-level bike. They want to make sure whoever's riding this bike is comfortable starting out. They don't want someone to just get into the sport and hate the sport and be uncomfortable on the bike. Even though I always say this, biking is a hard sport. You're going to have some pain in the sport. Nothing in life is easy. So don't go into the sport thinking you're always going to be comfortable, because it's not. And then usually on these aluminum frame bikes, you do have a carbon fiber fork to make, one, the bike a little bit lighter, but also the cockpit area where you put your hands at is going to be a little bit more compliant and smoother. That carbon fiber fork is going to be a little bit more absorb vibrations and make the whole front end be more vertically compliant. So you have this bike over here, which is the alloy bike, and going over here is the Tarmac SL6 carbon fiber frame. This is the first bike you can buy by Specialized with a carbon frame, and you do get a little bit more of an upgrade in components. You get Shimano Tiagra, 10 gears in the rear, 2 in the front. This is still a 5034 because it's an entry level carbon road bike. So again, they think whoever's buying this bike is going to be at entry level on here. But you do get a little bit nicer tires with the bigger price splurge. So this being $2,800, you do get Turbo Pro tires. These are very nice tires that are a little bit more performance based than these endurance tires over here. They're also a smaller millimeter, a 26C, which is a little bit faster. And then you get a hydraulic disc brake instead of a cable disc brake, which is obviously much nicer. You don't have to actually actuate the brake as hard, and it does a little bit better job for you. You get the carbon finishes, which is nice. You get some of the internal cabling all the way through the bike, and you kind of get this plated carbon fiber seat post. The bikes are, this bike is lighter than this bike as well, which I'll put the weights in right now. This here is the 54 Specialized Allez in aluminum frame. This thing weighs at 22 pounds, 1 ounce, and in kilos, 10.02 kilos. Aluminum frame, Claris group set, heavier tires, just 30C tires, but this is definitely more of an endurance setup. And then this here is a 54 Tarmac SL6 with a carbon frame, weighing at 8.71 kilos, about a 1.5 kilo difference, and 19 pounds, 4 ounces with a Shimano Tiagra setup, 10 gears in the rear, 2 in the front, but hydraulic disc brakes, and then these are skinnier tires as well, 26Cs, as you guys just saw. But yes, now let's say you come into my store and ask this question: should I buy an alloy bike at first or a carbon fiber bike, given that I have the money to go ahead and splurge? So this is my point. With aluminum bikes, really the only downfall is that, one, they're going to be usually heavier than their carbon fiber counterpart. These bikes are very similar in the matter that they're both entry level in that point, but the aluminum frames are just going to be a little bit more harsh to ride. It's going to be a stiffer ride vertically, so you're going to feel a lot more of the road and a lot more of the bumps, and it's going to feel a little bit heavier when you're going ahead and pedaling. Anytime you're riding in a group, to maintain top end speed, you're going to feel that weight. If you're climbing up a hill, you're going to feel that weight going up a hill itself. When you're sprinting, you're going to feel that weight as well. Like I said, the cool thing is that this bike does have the carbon fiber fork on there, but it still is a heavy bike itself. Also, the gearing. I wish they did add a little bit more gearing on there, better gear ranges. We're seeing more companies make strides to make this better, but they usually do put the bottom of the barrel stuff on the aluminum frames. I see this a lot of times where someone buys this bike, takes it to a group ride, and they always tell me they run out of gears at top end speeds, or if they're climbing, they don't have enough gear to get up kind of a hill like that as well. But really, the aluminum frame is just a heavier, more harsh of a ride bike. Can you do things to go ahead and compensate that and make it lighter? Of course you can. You can obviously change out the tires, change out the wheels, change out components, but it will still at the end of the day be an aluminum frame. Now, benefit to this is that it's more rugged, it's more robust. You don't have to be as gentle as it with carbon fiber. If you're worrying about scratching it, if you're worrying about riding on uneven roads or kind of crappier roads, or maybe going up and down curbs, maybe this is a bike for you if you're city commuting. Aluminum does still have its place in the cycling world, and it definitely is a choice of option to a select few people still. Whereas carbon fiber over here, the main benefit of this bike is that it's going to be lighter one, but people always assume that carbon fiber means it's much more lighter. As you guys just saw by the weights of them, they're not off by too much, especially being similar spec bikes. But the weight is not the craziest part. Once you get up to the top tier expensive bikes with carbon fiber, that's really where you really do see a big weight difference. But the weights are very similar here. What the carbon fiber does is that it just makes the whole overall ride experience much more enjoyable. It's more comfortable. It seems to respond better. It feels like it corners better. It feels like the bike just handles better underneath you. And this is not a selling point. If anyone has gone from aluminum bike to a carbon fiber bike, ask them if they'll go back to aluminum bike for the same price as their carbon bike. No, they won't. The carbon fiber bikes always do feel a little bit more responsive. They feel just like they can take off within a second. They don't feel sluggish. And that really is the main difference of them. Do they make you incredibly faster? No. To be honest with you, I would think the aluminum frame itself being stiffer laterally, back and forth, the material is obviously much more stiffer, but ask any Grand Tour rider, obviously they're riding much more longer distances. They want a bike that's not going to fatigue their body. This material is going to be much more absorbent and compliant, and it won't fatigue your body as much, so your body will stay fresher, you'll feel fresher throughout the day, and also you'll have a much better ride time, or ride quality time as well. Only big downside to carbon fiber is going to just be, again, maintenance to it, or go ahead and with the overall care of this stuff. The carbon fiber nowadays is much better, stronger. The longevity lasts much longer, but overall, it is much more of a brittle material than an alloy or an aluminum frame. If you are prone to dropping your bike, if you're riding on really harsh roads, if you're scared about hitting bumps, the carbon fiber can break easier than aluminum per se. Now, again, me being in the bicycle industry, as long as you're riding this bike how you're supposed to be doing and don't hit any massive potholes on there, you really don't see any breaks on these things just by dropping them wherever. Yes, you can have those one or two instances that's just like a crazy once in a lifetime moment, but I really do see rare carbon failures to bikes that I always say this: whatever would happen to an aluminum frame bike to break it, or a carbon fiber bike, will also damage that aluminum frame bike to the point where it would break itself. So that really is the only downside to the carbon fiber. Now the question you guys probably want me to go ahead and answer to you guys. And this is obviously opinionated in preference to manufacturers and everything like that. There's always going to be high-end aluminum frames made by some kind of third-party company out there. There's going to be allez sprint options. There's going to be CAD options as well. But this is just comparing similar models to similar price points. Entry-level aluminum to entry-level carbon. Really, this bike right here can do a lot. So you can go into any kind of group ride you want to, a bunch ride, whatever you want to do nowadays, and this bike will perform without any problem and keep up with it, as long as your fitness level agrees with that. These bikes now are taking a lot of the trickle-down technology of these current frames now, and they're making it much more easier for consumers to ride them. You have the addition of disc brakes, you have the carbon fiber fork. There is not a lot of things that you really need to change to this bike if you're like, hey, I just want to get on this bike to kind of start out the sport, and that's it. I don't want to have to upgrade it. All you need is some clip-on pedals and you're good to go. Now, like I said, you can go throughout that whole journey of saying, I'm gonna buy this bike, upgrade my components as I wanna go, upgrade my wheels as I wanna go, upgrade my tires as I wanna go. Yes, you can do that, but as you do that and you take this $1,200 bike, you start to add up. People think, oh, I'll just upgrade Claire's to 105. Well, that's not always the case, because when you do something like that and you take this 8-speed group set and you wanna upgrade to a 10-speed group set, you have to do that all at once. There's not a lot of high top tier premium group sets that are 8-speed out there that you can do just little by little. So you're kind of stuck in that option of being a 10-speed type of thing. An 8-speed type of thing. Also, the good thing about this bike though is now with these disc brakes is that if you were to buy this bike and really get into the sport and say, hey, I'm really liking this thing, I want to see what these disc brake wheels do, or I want to see what I can do with my money. Now, this being a disc brake bike, you can go ahead and buy yourself carbon fiber wheels down the road and not be hindered or limited to what you can upgrade to your bike. Because if you ever did down the road want to try a carbon fiber bike, you can take these wheels that you buy, carbon fiber wheels, and put them to your bike. And a carbon fiber wheel set to this bike would honestly upgrade it tenfold. I mean, you would feel it right away. The rotating mass would be much less. The ride quality would be much better, and also be much more comfortable of a ride as well. And depending on the aero depth of it, you'll definitely notice an aero gain as well on the bike too. Granted, this bike right here is much more of an endurance geometry, which I'll show you in a second. Another downside I can say to it is that these bikes, because they are aluminum, like the entry level, the geometry is a little bit more endurance based. Again, these are both 54 size bikes, but you can see just right next to each other. See, we got 54 carbon, 54 aluminum. As you can see right next to each other, you can see that this has a much smaller or a much lower handlebar here by a lot. So on these aluminum frames, again, I told you that the consumer for this bike is going to be a little bit more of an endurance-based customer or entry-level customer. So they want to make sure they're a very comfortable ride. So that's what people always ask. Does this race geometry make me that much more of a rider? Well, it just makes it to a point that you're not hindered on what your bike can do for you. Now, this is where I really do think the carbon fiber bike does have the edge on this. And this is just me again speaking just by me selling these bikes all day. If you come to the sport and you have the means to spend this type of money on a bike, $2,800, $2,700, let's say that you're a pretty physically active person, you want to take this serious. Getting the frame alone is a nice upgrade from $1,200. So again, we got to think about the price difference here. It's about double the price of this bike right here. So now you're not only getting a carbon fiber frame, but you're also getting an upgrade in that group set like I mentioned before. And this is Shimano Tiagra. This is a 10-speed group set back here. Granted, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Granted, you can't do what you can do like small intermediate upgrades like I mentioned before, going to like a 105, because again, this 10-speed group set is kind of standalone. But this 10-speed group set, there's much more options for bigger chainrings out here, and this 10-speed group set is still a really great performance group set in terms of shifting quality. You got a lot of trickle-down technology with the Tiagra on here, so you do get a nice group set on here that you won't have any issues with, that you don't have to worry about when you buy an entry-level aluminum frame bike. But not only that, just the performance of a carbon fiber frame. To give you guys an idea, the Tarmac SL7 Pro frame that they sell by itself is $3,300. This whole complete bike here is $2,800. This frame alone, I would have to assume would be $20,000 or $2,000, I'd probably say, by itself if they sold it aftermarket, but they don't. But with this frame itself, you will go ahead and experience a much better riding experience. There's much less you have to do in this in the sport. The bike is pretty much race ready. You could take this bike straight out of the shop and go do crit races with it. Not saying you can't do it with this bike, but this bike will be set up much better to do so. You have a better gear range on here. You have a better shifting on here. You have better brakes on here as well. The wheels are different, even though they both say Access Sport and Access Sport. These ones are a little bit set up to be a little bit more faster. The tires are going to be a faster setup. It's a 700 by 26C with a specialized turbo setup. And also the overall geometry on a carbon fiber bike is going to be a little bit more of a race geometry. Skinnier head tube. It's going to put you in a little bit more natural power position as well. It's going to lean you a little bit more forward and go ahead and allow you to use those glutes, those quads, and those hamstrings better. But in doing so, the main reason why you buy a carbon fiber bike is just to get that little bit of lightweight. You get that better compliance overall, and also the bike is going to just handle better. Like I said, it's hard for me to sit here and say spend double the money and you're going to notice it. Everyone says it's marginal, but anyone who's ever had an aluminum frame bike and went to carbon fiber, they always say the same thing. they're never going back. It's the exact same thing as buying an electronic group set when they have a great working mechanical group set. The mechanical group set works, yes. There's no issues with it at all. But as soon as they try electronic, they just go, I will never go back to a mechanical group set, even though it works very well. It just feels better, it performs better, and it's, yes, it could be marginal, but it's something that once you try once in your life, you won't ever go back to it. So I do think that the carbon fiber bikes are a better bike, in my opinion. Now, in conclusion, like I said, if all you have is $1,200 to get on the bike, $1,200 is still a ton of money. I'm not downplaying that at all. I don't have $1,200 to my name to spend on a bike, which is nice. So this bike right here is by all means not a toy. It works really, really well. It's capable of doing whatever you want to do with it. You have a group set that you can literally ride any bunch you wanted to. You can take it out, you can enjoy yourself. You can get a ton of great riding experiences on a bike like this at $1,200. So if all you have to your name is $1,200 and you want to get into the sport, by all means, get yourself a bike, start riding, and the more you ride, the more you'll appreciate the sport, and maybe you want to save up for something other, or maybe you just love this bike and that's it. But in terms of if you had the money for both and you're sitting there contemplating, should I save the $1,400? Once you spend the money on there and you go to carbon fiber, you won't ever go back to an alloy frame. I promise you that. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys again so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.